Hey everyone, it's Eddie Kalegi reminding you that each and every episode of Sports Speak is powered by SeatGeek. SeatGeek is a one-stop shop for tickets to concerts, sporting events, and so much more. And now you can use the promo code SportsSpeak on the site to get $20 off your first purchase. So what are you waiting for? SeatGeek. Let there be live. And now on to the show. How we doing, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Sports Speak Live. I'm Eddie Kalegi, powered by SeatGeek. Promo code SportsSpeak, all caps, one word for $20 off your first purchase online. Well, we've reached that time. Happy holidays, just a couple of days from Christmas. Second to last episode of Sports Speak for the 2023 calendar year. I'm going to be running it solo today. Tim's busy working at Apple Core Hockey. I just needed to get a few things off my chest. We're going to talk at the end, a little preview of NFL Week 16, particularly the first meeting between the Eagles and the Giants, and looking at the NFL playoff picture. Some NBA topics to dive into as well. But I want to circle back to my argument from last week. I said it to Tim and Zoe. Yamamoto's going to end up being a Dodger because they're going to find a way to get him in there financially, and he's going to want to play with Shohei Ohtani. And that's exactly what's happened. Yoshinobu Yamamoto, now a pitcher for the Los Angeles Dodgers, a team that already now has added Tyler Glasnow and Shohei Ohtani this offseason, just keeps getting better and better. Now, again, saw a point that I made, I at least touched on in the last episode that I want to dive deeper into to start off here. This is why this current postseason format for baseball, I don't have any problem with, because if you're going to set the parameters where there's only 5 or 6 teams who can spend this type of money, maybe it's good that it's a little bit of a shot in the dark in the playoffs and you don't know who's going to make it out. Make it more unpredictable, because if it was regular, generic format, not that many teams in it, wild card, either non-existent or back to its previous form, good chance you're not going to get these types of situations. And instead, you'd have the Dodgers and Yankees and Mets and Astros and Braves as like the 5 teams that can do anything. But this is ridiculous and outrageous with the Dodgers. And Yamamoto's contract is a lot of money. He's earned it. He's won Japanese Cy Young the last 3 years. But my whole thing is this. The Dodgers should not be able to afford to have him on the roster because Shohei Ohtani demands a lot of money. And when you already have Betts and Freeman on the payroll, you shouldn't be able to afford all of these guys. But because they were allowed to defer Shohei's payment, then all of a sudden it's just fine and sunshine and roses. You can bring in Yamamoto, and I would not be shocked if they still add a couple of pieces this offseason. So this is why it's just ridiculous. And I know you see what's right behind me, Citi Field, and I've been defending Steve Cohen left and right. But at some point, baseball has to realize that it's not healthy for the game for this to be going on. This is just absolutely ridiculous, but not a surprise to me at all. For both Mets and Yankees fans, very disappointed. I never thought Yamamoto was coming to the Mets in the first place. And Yankee fans, I think, were a little delusional as well, those that thought he was coming. Mets fans, certainly. As soon as Shohei Ohtani signed that ludicrous contract with the Dodgers, I knew it was over. They were going to get both him and Yamamoto. Now, the other thing that's really driving me nuts is seeing, so Ohtani goes to the Rams game on Thursday night, and they're acting like he hasn't been in LA the last 5 years. The Rams gift him this Los Angeles jersey. It says Ohtani on it, essentially welcoming him to the city. Well, I know Anaheim is a little bit away from LA, but they're still the Los Angeles Angels. He's been playing in the city for the last 6 years. It's not like he just came now. The Angels play, unfortunately, as much of a second fiddle role as any team in any 2-team market. I think the Clippers, you can say sometimes compared to the Lakers, but seriously, I can't think of any situation that's comparable. The Angels have had 2 Hall of Fame talents on their roster the last several years. Honestly, they had 3 for a few years. They had Pujols, Trout, and Ohtani, and nobody talks about them. And I know they haven't performed well on the field, but to treat this like, oh, Shohei Ohtani's finally in LA, He's been there his whole major league career. So that to me just drove me nuts. So my hope is that what has happened the last few years continues to plague the Dodgers, and that's that they can't make it that far. They struggle. They can't get out of the NLDS. They get beaten by some surprise team like Arizona this past year. Yamamoto, his one knock on him over the last couple of years, he is not a good postseason pitcher, and that's been the story for a lot of Dodgers over the last couple of years, including Clayton Kershaw and Walker Buehler. And I'll be really curious to see this rotation because you've got Yamamoto and then a whole bunch of guys who have had a whole bunch of Tommy John surgeries, including Glasnow and Walker Buehler. So we'll see how it comes together for LA, but just the fact that they can have Freeman, Betts, Ohtani, and Yamamoto all under contract at one time because you can defer all of this money that was owed to Shohei Ohtani. I'll keep harping on it. It really leaves a bad taste in my mouth. But now, where do the Mets and Yankees stand, and where do they go from here? Well, if you're the Yankees, you've already gotten Juan Soto this offseason. You got to feel at least a little bit happy about that. That being said, the pitching rotation is still a mess, in my opinion, beyond Garrett Cole. You're really going to be hoping Nestor Cortez can turn things back to where he was in 2022. Hope that Carlos Rodon can do the same thing. But besides that, the Yankees need another starting pitcher. I think the obvious choice right now is get Jordan Montgomery back. The Montgomery trade for Harrison Bader in the long run did not pay off for the Yankees in any way. And then Monty goes to Texas and wins a World Series. He was very well liked by the Yankee fan base. He pitched well while he was in the Bronx. I think he'd be the perfect player to bring back in pinstripes. Blake Snell is good. He just won a Cy Young, but he's going to be asking for a lot of money, number one. Number two, he doesn't give you a lot of length in starts. He doesn't go beyond 5-6 innings that often. I think there's a lot of drawbacks with Blake Snell. I know what he did in the World Series in 2020, but I think there's some problematic aspects with Blake Snell as a starter. So if I'm the Yankees, I'd really try to get Jordan Montgomery back to kind of try to fill a void, but they have some problems in that rotation. Then you go to the Mets. So they tried to get Yamamoto. They essentially gave the same offer, just less years to him, but he chose the Dodgers. Now, the Mets rotation right now is questionable. So you got Kodai Senga, you've brought in Luis Severino. David Stearns fleeced his old team and got two major league players for a minor league pitcher who needs Tommy John surgery. They get Adrian Hauser, who I think is going to be in that Met rotation. David Peterson's going to be hurt most of the year, so he's out of the mix. Tyler McGill, Joey Lucchesi, Jose Butto, that's pretty much the Mets starting options right now. So you need a pivot point. I really hope there was a strong plan B in place for Steve Cohen. We've seen him do some angry signings when he doesn't get what he wants. He's done that a couple of times over the last few years. So I'm hoping there's a pivot point where he can make a move and bring somebody in. But as of right now, I think there's some real concerns for the direction of the Mets right now, and they need a lot of help. But definitely in the forefront is getting another pitcher. The offense, I think right now is not in the worst place, but the starting rotation compared to what you had just a couple of years ago is absolutely dreadful. And they don't really have much pitching in the pipeline besides Mike Vassell. They just don't. So you can't really count on the minor leagues to develop some talent and get something up there because their starting pitching in the farm system is depleted right now. And you don't have much at the major league level either. So both the Mets and the Yankees, while they missed out on Yamamoto, it isn't the end of the world for either club. Both of them now have to look in the market to try to add some more starting pitching. And as has been said many times before, especially for Met fans, you can never have enough starting pitching. Mets went into last year with like 10 starting pitchers on the roster, and you get injuries, you're quickly down to 5. I mean, that's just the way things work in this sport. So you need as much depth at that position compared to any other spot on the roster. So going to be really curious to see how that works out. Let's go to the NBA for a second. So the Los Angeles Lakers a team that insisted forever they don't even hang banners for conference championships, much less playoff appearances. They'll only hang them if they win the finals. All of a sudden now they put up a banner when they win the in-season tournament in the NBA Cup. So you go from, oh, we're only going to celebrate a championship, anything less is a disappointment, to, oh yeah, this little random tournament we do in December, we're going to put up a banner for it. Like, I don't really like it. And we've seen the Lakers struggle since the in-season tournament. So they got to win this thing, but at what cost? Because I think now they've started to spiral. LeBron and Anthony Davis, don't get me wrong, they were fantastic in that tournament. And LeBron, what he is doing right now, as much as I've been pro Jordan on the Jordan LeBron GOAT debate, the fact that LeBron is still doing what he is doing in his 21st season, I'm starting to be swayed a little bit by those on his side of the argument. That being said, they're winded. They really tried to carry that Lakers team, and they did, to the in-season tournament championship. But now, with none of that on the line, playing in the regular season, the Lakers are playing bad against iffy teams. I mean, they lost to Chicago. They've had some rough showings these last couple of weeks since the in-season tournament wrapped up. And that's the other costly thing here. Because the one good thing about the in-season tournament is that it encouraged NBA teams to play with a playoff mindset in the middle of the regular season and create playoff level atmospheres for the regular season. Because the NBA regular season right now in its current form is just not getting a lot of attention. And there's a lot of problems with it. But one of them is just that these teams aren't really trying that hard, because the NBA in its current form, to me, it doesn't matter until the trade deadline. Because think about it. You got 30 teams in the league. 20 of them make it into the NBA playoffs. You got to think of the 10 who don't make it in. 5 or 6 of them are awful and know at the beginning of the season they're looking towards the future. They're not going to be contenders at all. So you get to the trade deadline, you definitely have those other 24 teams all in the mix. And it's not like you can spread out that far over 55 to 60 games. So you're going to have your teams that are towards the front. Then you'll have the ones in the bubble that still have a chance of getting to the top 6 and avoiding the play-in. And then you got the bad teams who will still have a chance at making the play-in. So it's almost as if the first 4 months don't even matter in the NBA regular season. And it's really about from the trade deadline into June. And that's disappointing because the NBA has Christmas and MLK Day, and those games just don't feel like they matter that much. I mean, nobody's talking about the NBA Christmas games this year. There's a Lakers-Celtics matchup I'm excited to watch, but the NFL's got Christmas games this year, and I think many more people, obviously the NFL's more popular than the NBA, but many more people are going to be tuning in for that than the NBA. It just feels like the vibes are down in the NBA right now. And it's disappointing because there's a lot of really good teams and it's going to be a competitive season, but there's just not much to be excited about if you're an NBA fan. And the in-season tournament tried to channel some of that, and it was great that we saw these teams compete at a high level in November and play like it's April or May, but now we get back to reality. And teams are resting guys, and players are not really giving their 100%. And the quality of the games over the last couple of weeks have been a step down from what we saw in November. So all of that culminating in, at this point, the NBA doesn't have much watchability. And that's really frustrating for a sport that I feel like was on the rise over the last few years, ever since about 2016, that season, especially among youth. And the thing that's just crazy to me is Rutgers. You feel like college students in New Jersey, that demographic should be good to get a lot of NBA fans. You have 3 teams that play within an hour of the campus. I walk around this campus and talk to people. There are not that many NBA fans. Football and baseball, way more supporters than the NBA. Working at the radio station, I'd say about 20 to 25% of the people in the radio station actively follow the NBA. And it's right there with hockey. And actually, I think hockey has more fervent fans than the NBA in this small sample size, which is a small sample size. But I'm just saying, you'd think that these would be the people that the NBA is trying to target, one, and that these are their fans. But In this instance, they're not, and I assume there are a lot of similar patterns elsewhere. So I think there's a lot of concerns about the NBA right now, but this in-season tournament, I don't know. I said I was going to give it a chance. It was cool. Created some exciting games in November and December that you wouldn't typically get. But besides that, I don't really see anything special about it. And the fact that the Lakers are hanging this banner to celebrate winning a championship where you won, what, 5 games to win it? 2 elimination games? Like, great. Congratulations. Doesn't mean nothing. One of the great things about the NBA's playoff format is you have to win 16 games to win a championship. I know there's injuries and such, and teams can be depleted because it's a long season, but in terms of the format, you cannot argue that the NBA doesn't produce a deserving champion with their playoff format. 16 games, 4 arduous rounds. You've got to win those. You got to win best of sevens 4 times. A team that wins a championship has truly been battle tested. The in-season tournament is nothing like that. You got 4 games in your group, a couple of elimination games. If you can win those, boom, you're a champion. Like, I don't like it. And sure, congrats to the Lakers and all that, but hanging a banner when you won't hang a banner when you win a conference championship because the only thing that matters are real rings. This isn't a real ring at all. So stop with this stuff. I mean, come on. But Lakers will be in action as part of the NBA Christmas slate, which I am looking forward to. The thing I'm a little nervous about on Christmas Day, though, is what's going to happen in the NFC East. So the Eagles and Giants, they met 3 times last year. Philly took all 3, but Philly has now lost 3 straight games. That game against Seattle on Monday night, heartbreaker. Probably the worst Eagles loss since the Commanders game, also on Monday Night Football last year. There was something about the Saints and the Seahawks for some reason. The Eagles have had so many gut-wrenching losses to those 2 franchises over the last decade and a half in the playoffs, in the regular season. And I mean, Philadelphia's playing decent to start that game. They drive right down the field. Jalen Hurts is sick, doesn't look it. A.J. Brown's making plays. DeAndre Swift's looking electric on the ground. Defense started off really well with Matt Patricia, for some reason, calling the defense now instead of Sean Desai. And then things just fall apart in the second half. And you let Drew Lock lead a 92-yard touchdown drive in the last 2 minutes. I mean, how do you do that? You've lost to Drew Lock and to Zach Wilson this season. I'm not pressing the panic button yet because San Francisco lost 3 straight games at one point too. But we are really approaching the point where the panic button will be pressed. And if they somehow lose to Tommy Cutlets and Mason Crosby on Christmas Day, the panic button is indeed in place. Eagles have 3 very easy games to finish the season, 2 against the Giants with the Cardinals sandwiched in between. You have to win all 3 of those games. If you're sitting there 13-4 and you went 3-3 in the 6-game bad stretch, okay, I'm not going to be that upset. But the fact that the 3 losses came all in a row, and I'm not so much upset about San Francisco or Dallas. To lose to Seattle, especially in that fashion, when they're starting a backup quarterback, is just absolutely brutal. And what are we doing? Why is Matt Patricia suddenly calling defensive plays? Matt Patricia gets a lot of credit for not that much accomplishments in his career. You think back to, his great defenses with the Patriots. Well, those are the same defenses that fell behind 28-3 against the Falcons in the Super Bowl and got bailed out by the offense that time. Then you think back to the Philadelphia Super Bowl where you allow over 500 yards, and that was his last game as the defensive coordinator, and then he goes and becomes the coach of the Lions. Before that, he was also the defensive coordinator for the Patriots Super Bowl win against the Seahawks, where they did allow 24 points. It wasn't a great defensive performance, and the big reason they won that Super Bowl is because for some reason Pete Carroll's calling a passing play with the ball at the 2, and Marshawn Lynch is his running back with 20 seconds left. So he got bailed out then. He gets bailed out by the Falcons choke a few years later, has a horrible defensive showing against the Eagles, then becomes the Lions coach, stinks up the job there, somehow is calling offensive plays for the Patriots last year, which was a nightmare, then joins the Eagles staff. Why is he suddenly the personnel for DC? Sean Desai has done an all right job. I think there's problems with the actual players more so than the schematics for the Eagles defense at this point, because there's a weird balance on this team. They only have two players in their primes on this defense, in my opinion. It's Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat. Then you've got a lot of youth from the Georgia Bulldogs defenses over the last 2 years that still need to develop to reach their full potential. And then you got a lot of old guys that are over the hill. Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, Darius Slay's getting up there. James Bradbury, who was horrible against Seattle, is also getting up there. So I don't know how to really feel about the move, but I don't think it really improved on anything. And I mean, Matt Patricia's defense became Swiss cheese against Drew Lock. Credit to Drew Lock. Cool to see after he kind of got forced out of a starting job. Didn't really think he was going to get another shot. Feels very reminiscent to last September when Geno Smith didn't think he was going to get another shot and ended up winning that game against Denver in the opening week and became the starter, led the Seahawks to the playoffs. So Drew Lock, I think that game assured he's going to get an opportunity with a team next year. But not a good look for the Eagles. And I do have my worries heading into this game against the Giants, who have looked good at times, but did have that loss against New Orleans. A few other games to keep an eye on here in week 16. We'll have our picks available on X at SportsSpeak Live. I'm a little bit ahead of Tim right now, 2 games ahead with 3 weeks left in the regular season, and then we pick every playoff game. So that's a good way to make up ground or lose it. I remember 2 years ago, Tim went 0-4 in the divisional round. So we'll see how that goes. But right now I'm feeling good about my picks, but a couple of games to look out for. A lot of injuries right now in the NFL, plenty of players banged up and sidelined. So that's creating real opportunities for teams. Has also impacted our fantasy football that we'll talk about to wrap this up in a minute. But Texans and Browns should be a good game. Case Keenum against one of his former teams helped lead Houston to that overtime victory against Tennessee. They're a little healthier this week. We'll see if Nico Collins goes. They do have Dameon Pierce back. Devin Singletary's been playing well. Dalton Schultz has been great, but no CJ Stroud. It's going to be Case Keenum against Joe Flacco in a game with major playoff implications in the AFC. Browns sitting at 9-5. And the Texans at 8-6 in a 3-way tie in the AFC South. And the other team, one of them is Jacksonville, and Trevor Lawrence is questionable for this week's game against Tampa Bay. That's a big game. Buccaneers trying to keep pace with the Saints as they duel for the NFC South crown and the 4 seed in the NFC. And with as bad as the 7 seed marker is around there in the NFC, it is very possible that as horrible as the South has been, they could actually get 2 teams in the playoffs in New Orleans and Tampa Bay if things go a certain way. But that loss for the Saints to the Rams on Thursday night did not do much to help them. So a big opportunity for Tampa Bay if Jacksonville does not have Trevor Lawrence out there. Cincinnati and Pittsburgh, Jake Browning has been triumphant for the Bengals after Joe Burrow got hurt, got that win last Saturday against Minnesota. Steelers have been in a complete free fall. 3 straight losses, 2 of them to New England and Arizona, and they turned back to Mason Rudolph 3.0 at starting QB. And the game of the week after Eagles-Giants, Christmas night, San Francisco and Baltimore rematch of the Super Bowl from 2012 when it was the Harbaugh Bowl. One of them still there. Now it's Harbaugh against Kyle Shanahan. Both teams are at 11-3. Very good chance that this could be a preview of what's to come in the Super Bowl. Ravens defense has been top-notch this year. Lamar Jackson has played to an MVP level as well. And then you look at San Francisco. Purdy, McCaffrey, Debo, Ayuk, Kittle, weapons everywhere. Defense led by Fred Warner has been incredible as well. So those are the matchups to watch this week. Let's finish with our fantasy football league. Poor Drew. Don't know what happened. Adam Tropper. And this is why SportsSpeak Gimmick Fantasy Football is so great. Adam Tropper was 1-6. He was tied all the way in last with me and Alec at one point. He ends up going 7-7, wins 6 of his last 7 games in the second half of the regular season, and knocks off 12-2 Drew, who ended up being the 3 seed instead of the 2 because he finished second to T-Glass in his division. So Drew loses to Tropper. Also, we get an upset. Miniker takes down Andrew Bellows, the defending SportsSpeak Fantasy Football League champion. So now we get Tim, Miniker, Tropper, and T-Glass. It's down to those four. T-Glass against Miniker, Tim against Tropper. Tim's got all kinds of injuries, especially in his backfield with Brian Robinson ruled out. So could create an awkward situation for him. This could be really funny. Adam Tropper has a serious chance to make it all the way through. Now, looking at the toilet bowl on the other side, I got a big win over Hoffman last week, so I need to win once in the next two to avoid last place. Tristan, who at one point this year was 6-1, keeps falling and falling and falling. Now he's playing me this week. The loser of that game will play the loser of Hoffman and Brett for last place in the league. So Tristan, who led his division for, I believe, 8 weeks, has a real chance of having to play for last place. So crazy how things have changed so quickly. But that'll do it for this episode of SportsSpeak Live. Next week, we'll preview the college football playoff, talk about the NFL, probably dive into Eagles, Giants, and whatever else happens this week. So Merry Christmas. Hope everybody enjoys some time with their families. And we'll talk next week on the final episode of 2023 of SportsSpeak Live. I'm Eddie Kalegi signing off. Enjoy your weekend and enjoy the holiday.